Hello again, guys. It is iFreeze700. We are back with some Kingdom Under Fire lore. This time, what the fuck is a swamp mammoth? Now, swamp mammoths are very unique in the Kingdom Under Fire series because there hasn't been any signs of other elephant species being around. So what we're getting at here is that this is really all we have. Now, as far as like lore and source material, it's all stated in the background, which is great because I love that. That means that people don't really catch on to the lore that is the swamp mammoth, which is fine by me. I love that idea. I love the idea of just having knowledge happen on in the background, because that's known as lesser known lore, which is what I excel at. So, swamp mammoth. Essentially, they're from Hexter, and they're from the swamp marshlands of Hexter. Now, never in the game have we ever seen the marshlands that these swamp mammoths come from, but it has been stated by the Jurai tribe that is deep, deep, deep in Hexter. So we're talking far into Hexter. So far in it that maybe even the Dark Legion doesn't know where. This is a very interesting idea. So this means that the orcs are more world explorers than the rest of the nations and the world that exists of Kingdom Under Fire. Now, something that's very interesting about swamp mammoths is that if we just look at their body, they look like they're made of stone. And that's essentially true. If you shoot arrows at the thing, the arrows will just break in half upon landing. The only thing that actually hurts these things is magic or heavy explosive ordnance. This could also be ballistas, so any sort of siege equipment can actually hurt their hide. This is known as their hide being so tough that it would actually require siege equipment to hurt it. This is a very interesting idea. I like it a lot. And of course, something that's very interesting is that the swamp mammoth is very slow. It's very, very slow and takes its time meandering around the battlefield. That being said, it makes up for this by having extremely long range. So not only is it tough and impervious to most damage, it also has a long range capability of hurting anyone who decides that, they're going to be near the fucking thing. Basically, the swamp mammoth is recorded as being docile, but docile is a term that I would not use. Now, you may think, well, how is it not docile? Well, it's not docile because it will kill just about anything that is around it. That, to me, is not docile. It is about as docile as a fucking hippo. This thing will kill anybody and anything around it. Now, why do I say that? Because it seems the swamp mammoth, when it comes to transportation, is a very finicky creature to transport. Now, the way they transport swamp mammoths is they ride them to the destination. That is a very great thing indeed. Cool, we ride the mammoth to wherever it is we have to go. Now, why is this a very dangerous thing, and why is this a very scary task to do? Well, it turns out the swamp mammoth, even though it's tamed, it won't intentionally kill any orcs that it is tamed by. It will rampage if you don't keep feeding it. I am not joking. The swamp mammoth requires constant nutrition to be able to move, to be able to go about its way, and judging by the way it is and the way it lumbers around, it probably lives a very sloth lifestyle where it doesn't travel great distances all the time. So if you have to travel this thing to war, you're going to have to travel it from your city all the way up to the front lines, and that could be a long haul for this beast. And the only way to keep the swamp mammoth tame and docile and not attack anybody is to constantly feed it. If you don't constantly feed it, but you keep whipping it and keep trying to push it to keep going and going and going, what's going to happen is the swamp mammoth is going to rebel. It's going to be like, fuck you assholes, I'm going to kill everyone around me. The only way of dealing with that is to slowly, I mean really slowly, this could take a couple of minutes of just you forcing food into its mouth until eventually it enters a state of zen. It has achieved enlightenment, and it sees that food is the way of life, and then it says, oh, I forgot why I'm trampling you guys. I'll continue on my destination. So a swamp mammoth is not exactly a safe creature. It's not a creature you want to keep around your kids, because if it stops feeding, it's going to kill everybody around it. And if it's more importantly walking through a wooded area, which it's not used to, something very interesting can happen. Now you see, the swamp mammoth is from the marshes, and trees that exist in the marshes are typically not pointy, and they're not usually in one great strand up into the ground. Now, the thing that we should also know too is that the land around these marshes are deserts. There's very little in the way of tree life. So the issue we have here is when Hexter goes to war against Velon or humanity, they sometimes have to walk through forest. Now you may think this may not be a big deal. This actually is a huge deal for the swamp mammoth. For you see, this is a very stressful time indeed, as they are not sure with the terrain, they're not used to it. And more importantly, they do not understand that stepping on a tree is a bad thing indeed. You see, the swamp mammoths, when they lift up their great colossal legs, they tend to just slam them down on the ground. Just place them, just thump those motherfuckers down. The issue is that some of the trees are not that tall. And what tends to happen is a swamp mammoth will actually get a splinter. Now, when a swamp mammoth gets a splinter, it reacts the same way if it doesn't eat constantly. It will kill everybody in a nearby radius. Now, you may think, well, that's not a problem, just lift up its paw and pull that splinter out. This is what the great chieftain Arukabar thought. But it turns out, as the tamers of the swamp mammoth have stated, to the swamp mammoth it is a small splinter. To normal people, it is a log that is lodged inside its foot. A actual tree lodged in its foot. Yeah, taking a splinter out is one thing, but to take out an entire tree out of someone's foot? Yeah, that's, yeah, this is something that's best left inside its foot. Of course, you can't leave it in there because the creature could get, dead from infection. And also, the creature's not going to calm the fuck down. It's going to keep spraying poison all over the goddamn battlefield, which leads us to our next topic. How exactly does a swamp mammoth kill? Well, it can step on you. Being squished by, a giant 50-foot tall monstrosity is definitely a way to go. Or it could just spew poison at you, which is something that it does. It spews a lot of toxic pus, out of its giant little sacs that are just sitting there on the side of its stomach. It's really weird looking when you look at it, because they're just two giant bulbous sacs that hang on both sides. But these sacs have little nodules that shoot out massive amounts of poisonous larvae that will just destroy anybody, no matter if you're wearing full-plated armor or not. I find this a very fascinating defense mechanism, because essentially, if you really think about it, this is a creature that tends to exist in the swamp. So, swamp is usually full of water, constantly. So, you would say maybe up to its knees or up to its ankles, it's always in water. And when a swamp mammoth feels like taking a rest, they just squat down and they just lay down. This is very interesting, though, that they have this bulbous sac, because now it means that they can possibly hit units that are very, very far away or directly in front of it, just by laying down. Now, when they fire their pus-filled balls of fluid, they don't lay down, unfortunately, but they just simply stand up, they let out a roar, and they just squirt their juices all over the battlefield. Now, something that's very interesting about this is that these juices, this poison, it doesn't happen in the video game where it can infest the water. But reality is that if this is so much poison that's coming out of it that it literally covers 15 men in one shot, this is enough poison to destroy an ecosystem. This is enough poison to seep into the water and make the water itself dangerous. This is an idea that I would love to see more in Kingdom Under Fire. Is we see the swamp mammoth in its natural habitat, and when a bunch of orcs are swimming up to it to hopefully capture it, the swamp mammoth just sprays a bunch of poison, and it doesn't need to hit you. That's the best part, because you're in the water. So what would happen is the whole water within a 50-foot radius just became super toxic, melt your armor, melt your skin off. Don't get near it when it gets pissed. But in the game, we never really see that come into fruition, but I would love to see that in the game. And also, something that I would like to speculate is how it eats. Most likely, since it's the swampland, there's not a lot of tall trees. Swamps usually have shrubs and very low, medium-sized bushes. So when it comes to these mandibles it's got on its face, they have these little pincers on them. And what I would assume this is for is to pick up bushels of grass and just shove it into its own mouth. Now, the only issue is that in the game, of course, it's an old game, so they don't show these mandibles moving. But it would be very interesting to see that, where you just see a swamp mammoth squat down on its two front legs and it's just shoving fucking grass into its mouth, just eating so much grass. Just nom 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 nom. But the only thing that we do know is that there are orcs who ride it, but the orcs who ride it are very, very cautious about riding it indeed. And something else I'd like to point out is that the idea that swamp mammoths are constantly in water is also supported by the fact that they're wearing giant metal iron anklets, little bracelets on its ankles. Now, the thing about this that would help prove that these creatures live in a lot of watery areas, despite not being able to swim, is that these iron bars that are stuck to its legs, they're very rusted. Now, the rust could be due to two things. Either the shoddy craftsmanship of the orcs, or the rust could be attributed to the fact that the swamp mammoths are typically up to their ankles in water. And that would make sense if they're coming from a marshland. It would make a lot of sense as to how it is that the orcs are able to just kind of capture these creatures. They have to swim very, very, very cautiously, and once they get close enough, they have to hope to dear God that the damn thing doesn't rampage and knock them off their boats and into the poisonous water. But besides that, this has been Freezer 700. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys have learned that now if an orc chief sends many swamp mammoths at your ass, it's because you really pissed him off. Just transporting these motherfuckers is a life hazard to the whole army. So the fact that he transported 4 to 8 swamp mammoths to fight you means that he is damn dedicated to kill you, considering how much food and water he would need to transport just the mammoths alone, along with his entire army. So besides that, I hope you guys enjoyed. And as always, like, comment, subscribe, do the usual. Just, tell me down below, hey, I love the idea about the swamp mammoth. Hey, I love what you're saying about it. Or just subscribe and just be like, man, I love the way he talks. Oof, it gets me hot and frisky. So, see you guys next time.